Hey there, welcome to the beginners friendly tutorial on Figma. In this tutorial, I'm going to teach you from scratch how to create interfaces that looks like these, and I'm going to skip you the complexities of the tool. I'm going to teach you things that we use daily, almost 99% of the time. When you sign up, you will get a screen that looks like this. You'll not be getting these files. However, what is more important on this screen is draft and teams. These are two folders, and inside them you create the files. Inside drafts, in the free version also, I'll be able to create as many files as possible. The only caveat is I'll not be able to share the files with other people to see or add comments or collaborate with me in co-creating the designs. However, if I push those files into the team section, then I'll be able to add collaborators or ask people to give feedback on the files. The thing with freemium version of Figma is it allows have only 3 shareable files. So here you can see it says 2 out of 3 files used. These are the 2 files that I've created, and I can create only 1 more. Now if you ask me, you don't need a paid version until you get a job. You can just practice Figma using drafts as much as you can. I'll not create a new file to get started. I'll open a tutorial live file because it is populated and I can teach you the concepts easily. So to begin with, there are 3 panels. So this is the top panel, this is the left side panel, and the right side panel. Top panel on the right hand side has the tools. This is the file location, and this is the shareability part. Let's just forget about this for now and just focus on this part. Now when you look at this panel, you might be overwhelmed by seeing so many items to learn, but actually you need to learn only 4 items. One is your frame, one is a rectangle, one is a line, and the last one is your text. That's all you need to learn to get started. Now let's look at the left and the right panel. So the left panel has pages and layers inside them. This is how this is page 1, and these are the layers inside that, right? What are the layers? This is a layer. I don't know what is this vector. I think by mistake I have it here. Okay, so this is a layer, this is another layer, and this is another layer. Any screen that we create is basically created using a thing called frame. So in Figma, the way a screen is constructed is using a box model, and each box is a frame. So for example, this is a frame and this is also a frame. So this is basically inside another frame here. Similarly, you can look at this for a better example. This is a big frame, inside that there is another big frame, inside that there is another frame, and so on, right? So you basically create frames for wherever you want elements to be, and all these frames will come up in the layers panel. That's all about the left panel. Asset is something that we can leave for now, and we'll get back to it when we talk about design system. On the right hand side, you can see design, prototype, and inspect. 3 items are written. This is also the process of design in general. So usually we create screens, that is design screens, and then we create prototype out of screen. And the last panel here is inspect, which is usually used by developers. Now let's look at the tools. We'll start with frames. So in order to create frame, I can select it from here, or I can press F, and then I can select the size of the frame. So I want an iPhone 13 size frame. So click on that, this is generated. Another way to create frames would be press F and drag a frame. That's how it will be created. Currently it doesn't have a fill, so we'll add a fill to it. It's currently white. We'll just add a color to it, and the color is currently solid. I can also make it a linear gradient. So that's how this is the gradient control. Assume that this is the gradient I want. So this is the color that is currently selected. I can select this color, make it yellow, and currently you can see opacity is added. I can basically change the value here and make it a solid. So this gradient looks nice to me. So yeah, so you can basically add a fill color. Similarly, you can add a stroke. The stroke is the border, so I can add a border to the shape. I can increase the border size, I can change the border position, This is inside, this is centered. What is centered? You can see the bounding box. This is at the center of the border, or you can change it where you want. We'll keep it inside and let's just leave it there. And the last item is effects. You can add the effect. By default it is drop shadow. You can see there are other effects as well, but most of the time we are going to use drop shadow. And inside drop shadow there are a few parameters that we can change. This is the X value. So if I look what happens when I increase the X value, the shadow shifts in the X axis, right? Similarly, if I add Y value, the shadow shifts in the Y axis. I can add blur to make it softer. I can change the color of the shadow, and I can also increase or decrease the opacity. So that's about this. Similarly, I can give opacity to the entire frame as well. So here I can basically change the opacity, and you can see that the entire layer's opacity is controlled here. In terms of the properties, whatever we learned for frame, the same applies to rectangle. So I can basically drag and draw the rectangle. If I hold shift and drag, I'll be able to draw a square. Similarly for ellipse, if I drag, I'll draw the ellipse, and if I shift and drag, I'll draw a circle, right? So that's how you create shapes. Most of the time you're going to be using frames, some basic shapes wherever required. Now let's get to text tool. So basically you click here and then you click on any frame and you can just start typing. This would create your text element. So everything here in text is pretty basic. However, there are three things that I want to teach you in this tutorial. One is this text is basically called as auto width text. So you can see that it is taking the width as I'm typing. Another text style is auto height text. So if I make it auto height by selecting this, you will see that as I now type more, the height is going to change, and it is not going to go beyond this. Next is fixed. So now you will see that as I type more, the box dimension is not changing. It is the text that is overflowing, right? And to be honest, most of the time, you can say pretty much 95% of the time, you will be needing this, which is auto height. So the final element that I'll teach you before we learn how to design this is going to be a plugin. So if I go to plugin and type in material symbols, I'll get a plugin by Google Fonts, right? And if you run this, you will realize that this plugin pretty much gives you all the icon that you need for UI design. Maybe you will need a few icons that is not here, but that is very rare. 99% of the time, whatever icon you want, you can get it here. If you want it in a different style than Google, that's up to you. But for me, I get most of the icons here. These are free to use. You can basically play around with the properties and see how they impact the icons. Switch off this. And now let's just dissect all these screens based on whatever we know. So whatever I've taught you is good enough to basically create whatever is there on the screen. So for example, this is just a text that needs to be written. But then now the question is, how are you going to find where exactly to place, right? So as an exercise to most newcomers, one thing that I tell them is just try to copy these designs, right? Not just these designs, but in order to practice Figma, what you need to do is basically select any complex design, any good looking app that you have, let's say Instagram or Twitter or Pinterest or Google Maps, take screenshots and bring them to Figma and try to recreate those screens. That will give you a hang of the tool. Now let's try to recreate this, right? So I'll go to frame. This is iPhone 13 and I'll create this. I'll drag it here. First thing to notice is we have a background color, so we'll give it a background color. I can give the hex value of the background color, which is this. I can copy this and paste it here. For some reason my paste is not working. Some bug in the system today, but what I'll do is I'll rather just eyedrop the color from here, right? Similarly, what about this? This is a text. I can just write the text. Now the question is, where will it be placed, right? So if I click on this and press Alt, this will give me the red lines. These are called the red lines. Basically it says the distance of this item from the borders or other different items, right? You can see that this is 36 from here and there's 122 from each side and 64 from top. So I want it to be first of all centered, so I'll use align tool. So this is centered. I'll press Alt and see the red lines. Just type in welcome and center align. Maybe this has to be W. So yep. Now the center line 122. You can see that this is 139. I want it to be 64. I'll just move it. And that's it. That's the right position. So this is how you can position any item. This you would have already dissected that this is a frame and inside that there is a text field. So what we'll do is press F, create a frame, give it a fill, create a text item, and you can also see that there is a rounded corner that is applied to the frame. So we can give a rounded corner here and you can see how that applies here, and you can adjust the size and the position, but you get an idea as to how to create them, right? Now similarly this will be created, similarly this will be created. It's just that this particular item can be done like this as well, which is you center align it, and that's fine. So now what to do about the images? Basically you can get the images from internet and paste it here, and that's all about images. And similarly if you go through the entire page, you will see that this is a frame and this is a text box, this is an icon that you can get using the plugin. One thing that you might not be able to create right now is using pen tool to create the waves. If you're not using pen tools for now, you can use a plugin called Get Waves. There's a plugin called Get Waves, and you can use this to create the wavy structures. So the plugin has loaded. The good thing about Figma plugin is you don't have to install these plugins for downloading it from the internet. These are available in the plugin market only, and you don't have to basically install them. They're directly available to use. So you can see, you can control the waviness, you can randomize, and you can see different waves being created, and you can then basically create, and you see this wave created. So, and one thing that you noticed here is this wave has opacity. If you click here, command and click, if you're not able to click any item because it is inside a frame, I'm trying to select, you may not be able to select individual items. So command and click to select individual item, or you can also select it from here as well. I usually prefer command and click. So if I click command and click, you can see that opacity is also applied. So you can apply opacity to colors as well, not just the entire object here. So that is there. You can see that this also has a shadow. So you know how to create a shadow. Everything else is standard. Line, you can use pen tool to create line, but I usually would suggest that you create line using the line tool, which is like this, which is slightly more convenient to use. And then this is again a frame, and here you will notice that this is a frame, and inside that a bunch of other things are there, and you will notice that this frame has a solid color, right? If I didn't have a solid color, here you will find the usage of color opacity. Assume that I want to use this blue. I want background to have 10% opacity. Now check. If I click on this frame and give it an opacity, everything gets an opacity. Every object gets an opacity. So I don't want to do that. I want only the color of the frame to have opacity. So that's where I'll select the color and give it an opacity. So I'll make it 10. So that's how I'll be able to create this. Now everything else is pretty straightforward. This is a frame. Inside that there is text. This is just text. This is text, and there's this dollar symbol, and this is again a frame which has auto layout. Auto layout is something which is advanced, and I will teach you later. And this is a frame which has a border. Border also has a color, and color also has opacity, and so on. You can also create this zigzag shape using pen tool. So I'll use pen tool. I'll click shift. So when I click shift, the angle at which I move are constrained, right? So they are 45 degrees. So I'll use shift, click here, shift, click here, shift, click here, shift, click here, and so on. I can keep doing that, and that would give me the shape that I want, right? So using this, you can create the shape. And the last thing to do is make a circular image. So usually when you get an image, it is going to be looking like this, right? Which is a regular rectangular shape. Now if you want to create a circle out of it, you can basically drag it and you will be able to make a circle out of it. Now if you want to create any other shape, let's say I want to put it inside a triangle, right? How do you do that? So you create a triangle, click on polygon here, leave it here. So this is a triangle. Take it above the object I want to basically mask. Now what I'll do is I'll basically move this triangle behind this image. So thing with Figma or any such creative tool is you don't just move items in left and right axis, but also in the Z axis, which is the vertical axis or the 3D dimensional axis as well. And to do that, what I need to do here is click on command and click on the right square bracket or the left square bracket in order to move it up and down respectively. So if I click on command and left square bracket, after few clicks it will go down. This entire thing, if you don't want to use shortcut, you can also use right click and you can see this bring to front and send to back as the two things as well. Anyway, so all we want is this to go behind. We'll select these two together. You can see that the triangle is selected behind and this item is also selected, and we'll just click on mask, and that will add the image inside a shape. So that's that. And then these are just icons and shapes created inside a frame. That's no brainer. And that's all the tools and techniques that you need to learn to create all these different shapes and frames and the screens that is composed out of them. Now all I want you to do is go ahead, click on the link in the description, use this file and try to replicate the file, because I don't want you to just listen to what I'm saying but also practice side by side, so that you get a hang of the tool and you also get a hang of the sizing and the spacing. That's all for now. Hope to see you in the next video. Thank you so much. Please do subscribe if you haven't. My name is Bharat. Hope you had a good time.